Now, the SNP have said they'll abstain in this afternoon's vote. Party leader, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, called it a huge political miscalculation and, quote, an extraordinary U-turn from Theresa May. Let's talk to the SNP's John Swinney. John Swinney. He's the Deputy First Minister. He joins me now from Edinburgh. John Swinney, the SNP said they're going to abstain. Why?
Because we're believers in the Fixed Term Parliament Act, and we support fixed term parliamentary terms. We have them here in the Scottish Parliament, and we believe and we supported the legislation for that to be in place in the House of Commons as well. And I think it's very clear that the Prime Minister has decided to abandon the legislation that she supported for a fixed term parliament to essentially seize the opportunity of the Labour Party's weakness to go for a quick election.
So if you support the Fixed Term Parliament Act, why did the Scottish Nationalists attack Theresa May when she became the Prime Minister, saying she hadn't been elected by anybody and had no mandate?
Well, it's a statement of fact. She hadn't been elected by anybody other than by, well, not even by the Conservative Party, because they didn't have an election.
But that's a consequence of the Fixed Term Parliament Act, isn't it?
Well, it's a consequence of the fact that David Cameron got himself into such a political mess, leading us into a disastrous referendum on the European Union, which he managed to lose, that he had to leave office despite being elected as the Prime Minister.
But why can you attack somebody for having no mandate, and then when that person seeks a mandate, you attack them?
Well, quite simply because we're believers in the Fixed Term Parliament Act, and we don't believe that Prime Ministers should be able to play the political games that Theresa May is quite clearly playing.
So it would follow, if you take that position, Mr Swinney, it does follow, therefore, that whenever there's a change of Prime Minister, by definition, they have no mandate if they can't call another election, and that they haven't been elected. That's a feature of the Fixed Term Parliament Act that you support. So it's surely an unfair criticism to have a go at somebody by saying the PM is not yet elected by anybody, as Mrs Sturgeon said. Why would you make that criticism?
Well, it's a pretty fair criticism because it's a statement of fact based on the fact that the Prime Minister has not been elected so far by anybody. Now, she's obviously going to the country. We won't stand in the way of her going to the country. Well, no,
people will regard this as an absurd processology position you're in.
Well, what your Parliament decided some time ago that there should be fixed parliamentary terms, and everybody thought that was a great idea. And the reason why we're departing from that in the vote today is because the Prime Minister sees a political opportunity where she's got leadership in the opinion polls ahead of the Labour Party to entrench long-term right-wing Tory rule within the United Kingdom. And we're simply pointing out that that flies in the face of what she supported in the Fixed Term Parliament Act before. And we'll make that point this afternoon.
She's sticking to the Fixed Term Parliament Act, Mr Swinney. The Fixed Term Parliament Act allows for an election to be called if 66% of the Commons votes for it. That's what she's going to ask for today. She's entirely complicit, complying with the Fixed Term Parliament Act.
Well, she's seizing the political opportunity of the weakness of the Labour Party, and that's going to be exposed and clear to see during the election campaign that we're going to go through.
A political party seizing the weakness of another political party? When did that last happen, Mr Swinney?
Well, you see, it's quite interesting that the Prime Minister was very quick to come to Scotland and lecture us about politics not being a game. And what the Prime Minister is doing today is playing a political game. She's seizing the opportunity of the Labour Party's weakness to try to entrench long-term right-wing Tory rule in the United Kingdom, and the SNP will be a bulwark against that on Scotland's behalf by promoting Scotland's interests.
If Labour is so weak as you seem to think it is, not just in Scotland but also in England as well, Mrs Sturgeon's been talking about some kind of possibility of a progressive alliance involving Labour, the Lib Dems and the SNP in Westminster. Is that a road you would consider going down?
Well, what we want to do is to make sure that we have a parliament elected that will not be a pro-austerity parliament, that will not be a parliament that's going to deliver a hard Brexit upon all of the citizens of the United Kingdom. So we'll be arguing in this election campaign in Scotland to be the protection against a parliament of that nature.
What about the Progressive Alliance point?
And we're certainly happy to cooperate with other people of like minds if the electorate give an outcome that supports that proposition. So the voters have got to get their chance now to have their say, to decide who's going to be the members of Parliament. And obviously the SNP will work very hard in every constituency in Scotland to win parliamentary support and to make sure that we can have enough MPs to protect Scotland's interests and to be a bulwark against austerity.
All right, Mr. Swinney, thank you very much. John Healy, do you fancy being a progressive alliance with the SNP?
No. I see no circumstances at all of that sort of coalition. We're fighting to win this election as a Labour government, and coalitions over the last Parliament have got a really rather bad name, and going into any sort of arrangement with a party like the SNP that is set to break up Britain as their sole purpose and failing as a government in their own country in Scotland is not for us.
That's a clear enough answer.